So the two of you guys are both in recovery and you both went back to school in your recovery. Were you guys in school while in your active addiction?
100%. I was pretty by the book, went to school, was in band, I was band captain, I was focused. And then at 17 in high school, I started smoking weed and it was okay, it was still manageable. But then when I got to college, I just let loose. I couldn't stop drinking, and then I was smoking weed every day. But junior year of college was when I started intravenous drug use. So immediately became completely unmanageable. And about 3 months in, I came clean to my parents. And I was like, there's no possible way I'm gonna pass these classes.
So your addiction was just totally getting in the way of your ability to even focus or go to class or do anything.
Right, I stopped going to class because my whole focus was how am I gonna get money for drugs today?
Yeah.
But I got a medical withdrawal from a doctor. So I got that semester wiped off my transcript, thankfully, and I transferred.
Was the hope in the transfer that you were hoping that if you switch schools or switching environments that the drugs won't follow you?
Absolutely. I definitely transferred because I was running away from my drug addiction.
Yeah.
That was 100% it. And I was okay for a little while. I was still smoking and drinking and doing party drugs, but then I decided to go smoke opiates because in my head I was if I'm not using a needle, I'm not an addict anymore. And it became just as unmanageable. And so trying to be a normal worker, trying to be a normal student, and then trying to come home to my parents and say, look, I'm doing so good. It only lasted one semester because that second semester I just wasn't showing up.
So I dropped out of high school before I started using. I didn't start using till I was in my 20s.
Well, every road I see leads away from me.
But then going in and out of treatment for 7 years, at one point I had gotten the chance to go back to school. And then I started dealing drugs. What do they say? You can't, a monkey can't sell bananas. So, I had all the bananas on me one day, and then it was just they were in my pocket and it was just calling me. And so I went in the bathroom at school, and then that started me probably on my last run, which lasted quite a few years. Luckily, I had gotten kicked out of school just for missing too many days, after I started using. So I was able to re-enroll after I had ultimately gotten clean.
Going to school while in recovery, what are some of the emotions that are involved in that? And Vicki, you're currently in school, so I want to hear from you too.
So it was terrifying for me to go back to school because I was in my 40s, in my early 40s, going back to school that, heavily based in technology, and I'm not very computer savvy or anything, and I almost quit the first day.
It's overwhelming.
It was extremely overwhelming.
Yeah, and I relate to both of you guys a lot. So I went to school in my active addiction, and it took me 7 years to graduate, and I actually never even got to walk the stage at my graduation because I was in my first treatment center. And then I also went back to school in recovery, and it was very different. And the main difference was that I actually cared, as opposed to just trying to keep up the image that I was okay.
So my biggest thing was school was such a huge part of my identity, as well as drugs, that when I went to treatment and had to stop using drugs, and then it was suggested to me that, hey, maybe you should hold off on school until you have around 2 years clean. I didn't know what to do. It was a huge challenge for me in finding my identity as who I was without drugs, finding my identity as who I was not as a student. And I did it though. I worked, I took the bus everywhere, I went to meetings nonstop, and I started finding myself. And then at around 15 months clean, my loans were coming out of deferment, so I said, okay, it's time to go back.
So yeah, for me, it's the whole thing. In recovery, we talk about trusting the process, and and it's essentially do the very best you can do, honestly, trust the process. And for me, it was to get out of my own way. I needed my routine to not give me a choice in what I was going to do that day.
Right.
I was going to go to work, and then I was going to go to school, and then go home and sleep, and that's it. And then when it was finally done, it took me a couple weeks to really decompress and realize did I just graduate college?
We're so used to instant gratification.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
taking the time to put in something like towards your bachelor's degree or towards a certification is hugely rewarding and helps retrain us and reframe our ways of thinking. And you guys are awesome, and I'm proud of both of you. So if there's one thing that both of you want to say to people who are new in their recovery and unsure what to do with themselves and are maybe thinking about going back to school, what suggestion would you guys have?
I told myself for years that, I'm not a day person. I'm good at starting things but not finishing them. So these are a lot of excuses that I could have given myself this time around, but I just gained the tools to not listen to the negative thoughts that you or anybody else are putting out there. And, it was cool to see little milestones, just the small accomplishments just kept adding up. I just know that if I can do it, I pretty much have faith that pretty much anybody else can.
My advice in regard to recovery in school is to wait. I got myself set up for success in school, and I took that time to find out who Vicki is before going into a new environment as someone who doesn't know themselves all over again. Recovery is all about continuing to grow and gain positive things in my life and to get through negative things. Get yourself prepared. Take the time to figure out who you are and then really go for it.